Welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans watch the best and worst horror movies of all time and talk about them. Today's episode is a bonus episode chatting all about a debut feature which has its international premiere at FrightFest Halloween on Saturday, the 1st of November. My name is Ben Errington, and today I'm joined by Nikolas Red, the director of Posthouse. Welcome to the show, Nicholas. Hello.
Hello, Ben. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to, share more about my film. Never really been in a podcast before,
Oh,
so
right,
I
okay.
I think this
First
is my
time?
first. Yeah, I've been in interviews, but never like a live. I mean, not really live, but an
Yeah,
actual
yeah. I guess
podcast.
podcast interview, but we're very glad to be your first. That's very special for us. So thank you so much. Of course, congratulations on the movie Post House. Before we get started, some details on the film for our audiences. Basically, it's about a troubled film editor and his distant daughter releasing an ancient monster while working to restore an incomplete silent horror movie from the forgotten Filipino horror past. And I guess that's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It basically happens in one night. It's about this. Yeah, like what the summary says. It's about this editor who, specifically, it's a silent film that they find. And in this film, there's this creature called the Manananggal that kind of haunts them, the dad and his daughter, while they try to piece together the film. You know.
Mm. Yeah, so I mean, I'm reading a little bit about the film. The project came to be based, was it based on your own personal experience while editing your brother? So your brother Mikhail, he's also a
Yeah.
filmmaker, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
I
And
guess he's a very prolific filmmaker here in the Philippines, and I guess most of his mainstream films are horror, and
mm,
that's where I actually got to practice my editing skills,
mm,
editing his movies early on. So yeah, the seed of the basically the seed of the idea, I got from editing alone in, it's based on my experiences editing alone in post houses in the during the night, coffee fueled, lacking sleep, and there are these moments where I would get I guess like delirium, or times where I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing anymore,
mm.
just because of the stress. And
Yeah.
it just happened one night. I was editing one of his films, and there's this outtake I was trying to sort out. And long story short, I basically saw something that shouldn't have been there. It was kind of like a shadow,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
I was present during the set when they shot this scene, and I specifically counted, who could have been present during that scene, and it just didn't add up. There was
Oh,
another
okay.
shadow there. So yeah, that basically gave me the idea to make a film about experiences of an editor, because
I guess it's good
not
that you.
only
I guess it's good. Sorry, Nicholas. It's good that you
no
didn't
no
just completely freak out. You just went, you know what? I'm going to take this terrifying moment and I'm going to use it for my own creative process.
yeah, I mean, I actually didn't have time to process it that much, because I was working on the deadline, and I was like,
Oh no, there's
I'll
no
just finish
time
this
to
first and make
no
this into
time
a
to
movie,
even
I
be
guess.
scared. If the deadline looms, that's the only thing that you can be scared of. That's the real horror. That's the real life horror, I
Pretty
guess,
much,
isn't
yeah.
it? So that was a short film. Was that a short film called Eerie? That's right.
And that's actually a feature
Oh,
film.
it's a feature. Okay, so apologies.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you're
by my brother
editing
back
that,
in.
but you've also worked as a screenwriter on your brother's film Lilim. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was the last project I did as a screenwriter for my brother.
Hmm.
I mean, in recent times, yeah. So I
Did
do write. I wrote a couple of, I think, horror films for Mick so far. Mick is my brother.
hmm.
Um, but before that, I was already writing some of his other features of other genres. But yeah, pretty much horror is where we both kind of mesh together well in terms of collaboration, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, is this your first time working on something not collaborating with your brother? I guess like obviously feature length.
Um, well, for Post House, I mean, he was a creative producer, in a
Oh,
way.
okay, nice.
Uh, I like, I don't want to say like my brother, like bought me a film basically by being the. So just to give you a brief background, my brother is also the CEO of this company, Evolve Studios, which we basically formed. It's kind of a sub company under a more mainstream company, Viva Films.
Mm.
Um, and he- he's not necessarily the financier, but as the main producer of it, he was pretty much the one who greenlit my film
Well, it's
for
nice.
the company.
It's
So
always
of course,
handy.
I'm thankful for that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Um, but yeah, I mean, aside from giving some creative input and helping as well in the post production, of course, he also gave me that leeway to like, finally make my own thing,
Mm.
by myself. So he kind of gave me that space as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess he wasn't on set every day.
Not every day, yeah. Maybe a couple of days
Not
where
every day.
he wasn't there during the biggest scenes where I actually needed him the most. But
Ah,
it
Mick.
was a challenge for me
Come
still.
on,
So I
Mick. Nicholas needs you for the biggest scenes. So I mean, we're talking about the influences for this film. Obviously, there is some information that comes up on the screen later in the film. We won't. I don't want to spoil anything in terms of like the monster or kind of like any reveals or anything like that. But obviously, the influences, I guess, other Filipino horror, Filipino folklore, silent films, and things like that. Can you tell us a bit about the influences?
so yeah, silent films are, this film is obviously very heavily influenced by silent films, particularly international ones, because well, first of all, there were Filipino silent films before, but like it's part of what the message in the film where it says that basically as a country we've lost all our silent films so far, and so none have yet been recovered.
Oh
Um,
wow, okay.
so that's very unfortunate. I actually, learned about this during my research when I was, when I decided to read up on silent films in general. But yeah, basically what gave me the idea, at least for the imagery, were these silent films where I watched as a kid. So just to give a brief background as well of my family, my our dad, of course, was also a filmmaker. And when I was a kid, I stumbled upon this kind of a box DVD set of really old silent films. So you had the classics like Caligari, I think was there, Nosferatu, and The
Oh wow.
Golem, which was kind of like I think a prequel to a long lost silent film as well. But yeah, watching these silent films as a kid, I watched movies, but I had no clue what these were. They were black and white, had no sound. So that was a pretty eerie experience for me, right? So,
Yeah.
and when I read up more about silent films, I realized how old they were, and basically, if you think about it, everyone involved in making these films already dead. So it's kind of like
Yeah,
looking
that's
into a
creepy. Yeah.
gateway, right, to the afterlife, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah, so I was a silent film aficionado for quite some time, even during the times when I was editing for my brother. At that time, I kind of uh I already knew that maybe someday I would make my own feature film, but at that time I was still focusing just, on my craft as an editor.
Mm.
But around, I think it was during the pandemic where, I got some free time for myself. Projects weren't coming in that much, so I got to join these script labs, workshops.
Oh,
And one
lovely.
of these
Okay.
workshops, which was a fantastic film school in the Bifan Festival in Bucheon, Korea,
Mm.
where I developed, I guess, the first iteration of the concept for Posthouse. And it started off with just being about this editor working alone in a post-production facility. There still wasn't a silent film or anything about that, right? But yeah, I got to develop it further. Then, I added some elements to make it, I guess, more mainstream in a way. Because
Mm.
back then, I started it off as a really micro budget film that was just planning to do, like kind of an art house film, not really show it in theaters. But some parties got interested, told me that, this had, I guess, commercial potential. So I had to develop the script further. That's where I added elements like the daughter, and other I guess a kill count. You can say other people
Yeah,
getting killed in the film to make it more
yeah,
suspenseful.
of course.
Um, then yeah, I mean, I guess around like a year ago, we already started our company with my brother, and he got green light this film. I like to mention, of course, before I uh brought this project to my brother, and I was already working on Posthouse with my other producer, Iana Bernardes, who's also a creative producer in Posthouse, right? So we got to ship via script around. It won a few grants, one of them being in um, also in Buchon, the project market in Buchon back in I think. Sorry, I'm really not good at dates. I'm actually working on this series recently, so I kind of like lost track of how
Sometime in the
Posthouse
past.
develops. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, sorry, I was rambling, but in a way, that's
No,
how I
not at all.
came up with it from watching these silent films.
Yeah, I guess it's always good to like write about what you know. Obviously, Stephen King, all of his stories about writers. So I guess for you to make a film about an editor makes total sense, right? Because it must be frustrating, when it's a film about your craft and you watch a film and you go,
Yeah.
they would never do that. This wouldn't happen like that. I guess you're perfectly placed to be able to showcase what an editor does day to day
Yeah.
at night alone,
Um,
fueled by coffee.
Yeah, I think that was also part of it. Not I wasn't quite sure at first where if this would be relatable, to a general audience, being about editing, not just editing, but actual film editing, piecing together like 35
Yeah.
mm and stuff. But I guess since with the social media age, like there are actually been like uh an influx or like more editors coming in. I
Mm.
guess people now you can even edit films just on your phone. So
Of
I guess
course, yeah.
editing in a sense is becoming more of a universal thing. Like
Yeah.
even someone can appreciate,
Well, I guess
anyone can appreciate.
it's just a good backdrop for the horror anyway, isn't it? Like that's obviously the most important thing in the film. It's just the editing, which is the element
Yeah.
that sort of drives the narrative.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I was also reading some so I'm not sure if these influences are something that interviewers have sort of put upon you, or these were influences that you suggested yourself. But there were films like The Ring and Sinister, and also Silent Hill, and also the PT playable teaser for Silent Hills, the cancelled game. Were those things that influenced the movie as well?
Yeah, definitely. So working on a film about silent films, I didn't want it to be too, I guess, alienating, to
Sure.
certain audiences. So I also wanted to add some contemporary influences as well. So yeah, Sinister's being one of them. I came upon this article before that supposedly ranked it as being one of the scariest films ever.
Yeah,
Yeah, and some people disagreed,
it always hits the top of
right?
the list, doesn't it? Like for the actual scariest film.
And a lot of people disagreed, but I think it's more of they misunderstand the article in the sense that it's not necessarily saying it's a really really good film, right? It's just scary, and if you just lay it all down into science, I guess it's how much the protagonist is vulnerable, or maybe it's just the mere fact that it's a film about someone watching horror, I
Mm,
guess. And that also gave me the idea to make a film in that sense. Like it's about someone watching something scary.
yeah.
Um and it's also maybe it's the amount of jump scares and the spacing between it. And I know like jump scares has a bad rap of being like too cliche, but as a filmmaker, debut filmmaker, that's one of what I wanted to work on, like how to make jump scares more effective, scarier, but of course still working within the range of our budget. You had to
Yeah,
really
of
be
course.
creative.
So how do you feel about
Um,
jump scares in particular in films?
I mean, I think it's really unavoidable that it does grow stale, especially when there's just too many of it, and
Yeah.
you're competing with bigger films like the ones made by James Wan, where they have all the budget to make these really intricate camera movements and jump scares. So it's hard to keep up with that. But I do believe, yeah, I mean, jump scares still uh it's always been there, in horror films. It's just evolving in a way.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily bad, it's just you just have to be
Yeah,
creative
yeah.
in doing them.
I think they definitely have their place, don't they? I think sometimes if they're too telegraphed, it can be difficult to enjoy them. Or especially audio wise, when
Yeah.
you hear all the sound drop out, you're like, okay, something's coming up. I don't know what it's going to be, but yeah, it can be difficult. Um, so yeah, let's talk about the creature design. So again, I don't want to spoil anything because it
Yep.
would be good for people to see exactly how this creature is on screen. But so Manangal, is that correct?
Manananggal. So it's
Mananangal.
this
Okay, so there's an extra
yeah, it's
R
a
in there.
mythological creature in the Philippines. So I had my own take on it, but the basic elements of a manananggal is basically it has wings. It's usually a woman. But I guess its most peculiar feature is during the night its upper half, its torso separates from its
Oh,
legs, its lower
oh
half.
God, yeah.
Uh to like get into houses and like corrupt babies or something.
Oh
Something
no.
like that, yeah. But in a way, I guess it's just, a Filipino counterpart to the vampire. It also
Yeah.
has these like elements, blood sucking, a long tongue and like fangs and stuff. But in when I was doing my take on it, this is actually where the ring comes in, the influence. So
Mm,
you obviously have the image of Sadako, the typical Asian long-haired lady,
mm.
which if you in particularly in Filipino cinema horror films, The Ring and even The Grudge was a huge hit here in the Philippines, and it's
Mm.
actually ingrained in our horror our memories of horror films. So in a way, it's paying homage to that. It's a very recognizable character, but at the same time, I added my take on it by being the Manananggal. Um, but the creature is also kind of a hodgepodge, or it's kind of like a Frankenstein monster of different, just really these different creatures in horror films, which I basically stitched together. So and there's also elements of Nosferatu,
Mm.
its hands, those long fingers. Um, it it's its imagery is somehow also inspired by the Golem, the one I mentioned earlier, the silent film.
Yeah, yeah,
It being I actually made a short film before this. I might even release it in Facebook sometime
yeah.
soon. We made it as a kind of like a proof of concept for the creature.
Sure.
So the original image of it was actually more bulkier. Of course I don't want to spoil much, but yeah, it was basically this golem kind of creature. At the same time, I also added some non-cinematic elements to it. It's kind of also inspired by, I guess, by the goddess. It's a Hindi goddess Kali. So the
Okay.
imagery of Kali, with the long tongue, the long hair, the
Yeah.
very dark skin, I added that as well. Um, but yeah,
I mean, it's great. It's great. It is
great
terrifying. And I
actually.
guess like, is it something that appears very often in Filipino horror? Would you say? Is it?
Yeah, very very much. Actually, I think it's the most represented Filipino mythical creature in movies, I
Oh,
guess.
okay. I
Second, or yeah,
it's te
I think so, pretty
it's
much. It is
terrifying.
the
I'd
most
love to
common.
see it. I'd love to see it in more films, like more films in other countries as well. I think it's a great
Yep.
design, and it is terrifying. I think that addition of sort of like the big leathery wings is always is always scary, isn't it?
Yep. In fact, the very first horror film made in the Philippines was called The Manananggal. It's a film based on the creature, and it's
That's
a
the si
silent film.
that's the silent film that
Yeah.
mentioned as yeah, yeah, of course, of
So
course.
we kind of did our own take on it as well. It's in our film, that's the film he supposedly recovers, right?
Yeah, of
But of course, it's a
course.
different,
Okay.
version of it.
How was that process then of filming of making a film within a film, and how did you sort of apply yourself to that? Obviously, because that must be quite difficult, kind of replicating the way a silent film looks. How was that process?
So my first challenge was, or maybe not really a challenge, but it was more of a decision I was going to make with my producers and creative team, if we're really gonna approach it, making these scenes the way they did it in the past, very production design heavy, props heavy. Would
Mm,
we use abundant VFX for certain scenes? So I made the decision that, I mean, besides the fact that you could also cut costs, right? I decided that we're gonna make it kind of like a school play where we do the props. So almost everything in the silent film is practical. We
mm,
rarely used VFX. We only use it for cleanup. So the set design was pretty. We constructed at least parts of the set design. Um, and the props, most of it were physical and practical, just really to emulate the style of these old silent films before, right? And though some of them look like outdated or kind of like tacky, but in a way, that's how silent films look as well before. If you watch
mm.
these really old silent films, they were kind of like stage plays, right? Of
Yeah. I mean,
performers.
if a silent
Um,
silent film from 1927 didn't look outdated, you'd probably be a bit confused, wouldn't you? So,
yeah. And of course, there was also the question of whether we should shoot it in actual film. But of course, that would be too costly. So, we still shot it digital. So it was a
mm,
matter of getting the VFX right, in terms of making the silent film look. So even the grain, the frame rate of the film, we adjusted specifically for it to look really, really old.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I mean, most of it, most of the silent film he watches through a moviola. So a moviola is a very, very old, kind of like an ancient editing machine. So it's kind of an analog editing machine where
mm,
um it's pretty much mechanical. It looks like kind of like a big vending machine
mm.
where you see it through a little screen. So that's actually a very important centerpiece of the film, the old moviola. That was actually real. We used a real moviola. It was still working, but of course we had to replace some parts, and the screen we had to basically, it was all VFX. It had to be composited.
Mm.
um but yeah, I mean, all the challenge in the film, I guess, going into this was just how to make the silent film more uh believable, right?
Yeah,
More real, I guess.
yeah,
Because the rest of the horror film, again, it takes place in pretty much one location. There were minimal characters in the film, so it wasn't easy, but that was the easier part, I guess,
yeah.
for me.
How was
But
managing the father-daughter relationship as well? Because I guess that was quite complex. It was like a working relationship as well. They were kind of working together on this film.
yeah.
How was managing that? And obviously, like generational trauma is something that runs throughout the film as well. So that's
Yep.
a theme that's very prevalent. How did you manage that when writing and directing, I guess?
So, okay, without spoiling much, of course, yeah, like what you said, the film deals with generational trauma, and obviously, the film that the editor, pieces together, it has something to do a lot with his past, and somehow it reawakens these, you know, traumatic memories that affect him in such a way that he kind of passes the trauma to his daughter
Mm,
while working together. Um, And there's also kind of a theme of, being a second generation editor or filmmaker in the film. It kind of mirrors not just mine, but also my brother's experiences, right?
yeah.
Being second generation filmmakers ourselves, trying to fill in the shoes of, our legacy. So yeah, the script pretty much hits close to home.
Yeah.
Uh, and I didn't even intended it for it to be that way. It was, again, when I first developed it, it was just pretty much about a single editor in the Posthouse. But I got it through labs, some script workshops. Some of my mentors or teachers in these workshops, they knew about my family background, also
Mm,
my dad being a filmmaker. So in the process, they would kind of ask me, are you sure you're not, reflecting yourself to this character? Are you sure you're not you don't want to, inject some of your own experiences. At first, I really didn't want to because, being my first film, I just didn't want, my other family members in the picture. You just want this film to be more about your story, right?
Yeah,
But the more I just tried to see how to make this character relatable. I in a way I had to dig deep, and some insecurities, some my personal experiences or personal opinions of being a second generation filmmaker.
that's good
I
though.
guess
Yeah.
I had to impart to the characters as well.
It's good that it's kind of clear and it's relevant and it's there in the film. I guess because if you try to, avoid those things, they might unintentionally bleed into the film. So I guess it's really good to just,
Yep.
go all in and go, look, this is a very personal story as well. There's a lot of me in these characters. And, I guess it'll feel more, um, it'll make more sense to the audience with that, and they'll understand you as a filmmaker. Obviously, we've got Fright Fest, the international premiere coming up. Did you say it's premiered somewhere else already? The world premiere was that in where was
Sorry,
that?
I think, well, to be clear, I think this isn't the international premiere. So I get it already premiered in Osaka,
In Japan, yeah.
uh, Japan,
So this is the
a
UK
couple of months
premiere.
ago. So this is the European premiere, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
European premiere, yeah, yeah. Um, do you know much about Fright Fest? Do you obviously you said you unfortunately you can't attend, but obviously the main festival
Um,
in Fright Fest we attend every single year. We've been doing coverage on the ground now for probably like 5 years now. It's a great festival, and for it to be taking place on the Halloween festival as well is obviously great.
um, I read about the festival. Again, being a very first time filmmaker, no, I'm not that still aware of the festival circuit. So, but I mean, you have actually pretty good lineup. So,
Yeah,
I
I mean
think
it's a great
Coyotes
lineup.
is showing. Yep.
So it's obviously sandwiched between a slasher film called Dolly and then the Turkish coffee table as well. So it's a pretty good
Yep.
slot for the day on the Saturday directly after Halloween as well. So everybody's on I guess on the come down, and they need their horror to ramp things back up again immediately. All the horror fans will be hungry for that. Do you have any more festival appearances lined up yet after Fright Fest?
Not at the moment, or I guess there are some festivals I'm not sure if I can reveal, but yeah, we're still
Okay.
shipping it around. Yeah.
So there's potentially news of Posthouse appearing at festivals in the future. And I guess, do you have any plans for the future release, for streaming, for any physical release or anything like that?
Um, I- Streaming definitely, yeah. Well, we do have plans for it. Again, we can't reveal much, but definitely, yeah. We are going to
We will
have it. It will give it a platform other than
Yeah,
festivals.
yeah, of course. Well, of course, what we'll do is we'll update our audiences when it's available or when it's appearing at other festivals and everything like that as well. Um, are you working on anything currently? Are you working on anything? Have you got your next project sort of lined up? Are you thinking of are you going to immediately go into another directorial gig, would you say?
So I'm working on a few scripts. They're kind of like semi horror. So,
Okay.
I do want to branch out to other genres, but for now, maybe I might just be focusing first on my editing. My brother definitely is going to be making his next film, and I'm definitely going to be there to edit it. So, probably maybe after, maybe after my brother,
Yeah.
thinking about doing my sophomore film.
Exciting stuff. Well, again, congratulations on the movie Post House. If any of our audiences
Thank
are
you.
attending Fright Fest Halloween, be sure to check it out and let us know what you think of the film as well. Of course. But thank you so much for joining us, Nicholas. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Thank you,
thanks to
Ben.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And thanks everybody for listening. Remember, go to horrorhangout.co.uk for everything in one place, including our Patreon. And follow us on all social media platforms
Yep.
there. Thank you so much, Nicholas. It'd be
Yep.
great to catch up again soon. Take care and see you soon.